Are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my research topic was about the demilitarized zone in Panmunjom. Well, when we think about the demilitarized zone, what do we automatically think about? That it's an area where it's no military occupation, right? But really, it's more than that. The demilitarized zone, for one, is in. If we go on to the next slide.
Yes.
Okay. For one, the demilitarized zone is an area. If you look at the, it's pink. It's 4 miles wide and 155 miles long, and it splits the Korean Peninsula directly in half, north and south. And it's more to that. It has 4 different components that I'm going to highlight on. It has Panmunjom, the Truce Village. It has the Joint Security Area. It has 2 villages, and it has the military demarcation line. If you go to the next slide. But first, we have to figure out exactly a little bit more historical context about it. We know that the Soviet Union had influence in the north, and we know that the United States had influence in the south. If you can, I think you have 2 clicks. We'll do it. Okay. All right. Next slide. It's more really historical. I mean, well, we have to figure out when exactly were the Korean Peninsula split in half. I researched it, and in 1945, I found out at the conclusion of World War II, the Korean Peninsula was split in half at the 38th parallel for military occupation only. Not really what it's split today for, but really so that the Soviet Union can take the north side and the United States can occupy the south side. But as the Cold War started in about 1947, it became more of a political barrier between the 2 countries, meaning that the north was more influenced by a communist type of regime, while the South was influenced by a more democratic style of government. Okay. Now, there's 2 cities inside the demilitarized zone. The first one is Daseong-dong, which is in South Korea. Now, this village is relatively small in that it only has about 230 residents, and they are mostly farmers, I believe. And they're a little bit different from the regular South Koreans in that they don't have to pay the same tax rate, and plus they have curfews, which means that they at a certain time, I think it's about 10 p.m., they have to be inside. Now, it's 1 mile. It's 1 mile separated from the North Korean village. Go to the next slide. It's called Kinjong-dong. Now, this is called the propaganda village, mainly because there is a lot of lies told about this village to the North Korean people. The North Korean people mainly think that the village is populated and it's a very prosperous civilization, meaning that a lot of people are there and they're doing real good and the economy is great. But really, the village was created I think, in competition with Daseong-dong, which is the South Korean counterpart of it. Now, inside the village is mostly occupied by soldiers. And if you notice, the background picture is of one of the tallest flagpoles in the world. Now, it's funny about the tallest flagpole in the world because when Daseong-dong built their flagpole, that they decided they were going to build a higher flagpole, and it kept going and going and going until it finally became one of the highest flagpoles in the world. Well, next slide. Alright, the military demarcation line. The military demarcation line lies within the center of the Joint Security Area, and oddly enough, it's on the 38th parallel, which originally separated the two countries. Now, the thing about the MDL is that it's the point where you cannot cross, and if you recall from Joint Security Area, that's where most of the soldiers were lined up exactly on that line, not being able to cross across it, but being able to spit and throw stuff over it. And if you go to the next slide, few people have actually crossed the line legally, and mainly the people who crossed the line legally were mostly diplomats going to North Korea either for summits, and lately, if you heard in the news, they actually crossed the line for the New York Philharmonic, where they performed in North Korea. That president is President Roh Moo-hyun of South Korea. In October 27th, he made history by being the first president to cross the MDL by foot. Okay. Next slide. Now in the DMZ, since it's a 4 mile by 155 mile zone, which can't be populated by people due to the agreements made by the armistice, which ended the war in 1953 when it was created. It has no human contact, which means that since nobody is there living there except for the two villages and the joint security area, it has allowed more wildlife and more wild shrubbery to grow in the area, and it is really has gained like international recognition for being a nice wildlife preservative because no humans are there. It's kind of down point for what humans do to nature. Next slide. All right, the joint security area. Now, the joint security area, I got really confused in researching because the joint security area and the Panmunjom village are two terms that are really intermixed with each other. When somebody's saying Panmunjom, they may be referring to the joint security area and vice versa. Now, the joint security area is the area which was established when the DMZ was created as a location where diplomats can meet together. For one, in the blue buildings, which I believe that picture is showing them in. And if you go to the next slide, in the joint security area, it's known for where both North and South Korea can jointly occupy through military forces, but really they can't really occupy each other's part. So it's a place where they could come together and guard, basically, each other's zone. If you go to the next slide. The Truce Village, Panmunjom. It's called the Truce Village because that is where the armistice or agreement was signed in 1953, which ended the Korean War. Like I said, the term is always intermixed with the joint security area. Much of the village was destroyed during the Korean War, which was one of the reasons why it was vacated, and also because of DMZ restrictions, nobody can really live there. But Panmunjom also and the joint security area also have landmark historic buildings. I don't know what slide you're on, but like the Bridge of No Return. The Bridge of No Return in 1953, at the end of the Korean War, it served as a return point for prisoners of war during the Korean War to return safely back to South Korea. And the next slide is a picture of the House of Peace, which serves as a location where ordinary citizens can join together through meetings, and etc. And the next one is the Freedom House. It's called the New Freedom House because they just built that building that you're viewing in 1998. And if you look in the lower left-hand corner, that's a picture of the old Freedom House. And there is where more or less activisms and also meetings from the two countries can take place. Next slide. If you compare it to the world, to worldwide, that isn't the first demilitarized zone that was created. There are several other demilitarized zones that have been created, and also most of the ones that have been created are no longer are no longer existing today. For instance, the one in Vietnam, the demilitarized zone in Vietnam was created in 1954 after the first Indochina War, and it separated North and South Vietnam. Another demilitarized zone was created in 1933 when Japan took over Manchuria and created a demilitarized zone between that and China. Next slide. And also in 1948, after the Arab-Israeli War, there was demilitarized zones separating nations. Go to the next slide. But the thing is if North and South Korea come together, there will be no use of the demilitarized zone anymore, since they will unify. But that issue is debatable. Will they ever unify again? I mean, North Korea has become a little bit more fluid with its borders and regulations, but still, they're two different political organizations, and also will the United States allow them to join together? So that's really the end of my presentation. If you guys have any questions.
Can I correct you real